Hey, this is Brian. Thanks for watching Kies Motorsports. So we've had tons of requests over the last year and a half to do a video on more like a buyer's guide, like what to look for when you're buying your first F30. And we're going to do that today. Now, what we're going to share with you is applicable if you're buying an F80. It's applicable if you're buying an F10, F15, pretty much any modern day BMW or even older BMWs. I'm just going to share with you some of the things that I look for when I buy a car, and I'm going to point out just about everything that's wrong on my new car. Now, before I get too far into tearing my car apart and telling you every single little flaw that I have in my car, I do want to tell you that I did buy my car online. Many of you know that I do live in New Jersey and that I have referenced in a couple videos that I bought my car in Texas. Now, when I set out to look for a 335, I looked locally. I looked at a lot of my local dealers. The only problem is a lot of them were CPOs, and it was just a little bit more than I wanted to spend. So what I did is I just continued my search, and there's a lot of these new companies that are popping up online. If everything goes well, it'll probably be the best buying experience that you've ever had. However, it could also quickly become the worst buying experience that you've ever had. One of the major things that I think holds people back from doing it is you can't test drive or see the car before you buy it. Now, the good thing with these companies is a lot of times what they do, I'm not going to say the name of the company that I bought my car with, but the way that it works is they will ship you a car for free. Most of these companies, you get to drive it for 7 days. If you don't like anything about it, you can return the car, no questions asked. They'll pick up the car for free, and you get all of your money back. You know, in my opinion, I think that's a lot better than driving a car for 10, 15 minutes. And then whether you're spending $10,000 or $100,000, it's, that's a lot riding on 15 minutes. This way you at least get to take the car home, you get to drive it, you get to park it in your garage, you get to really inspect it and make sure that it's everything that you want. So from the outside, this car looks absolutely amazing from pictures that are far away. And I'm going to show you some of the details. Before I get into the outside, I just want to cover the inside. The inside's going to be a lot faster, so I think that we can just cover that a lot quicker, then we'll spend a lot more time on the outside and then the underneath. All right, so after about waiting for 2 weeks or so, I jumped in my car. I was excited to drive it for the first time. And the wheel was kind of like this. It was kind of like in the 11 o'clock position. And I thought, oh, that's weird. I just figured that I would jump in, straighten it out, and everything would, be good. So very quickly I noticed that the alignment was off, and the wheel shook like crazy when I tried to drive. So I said, you know what, I'm just gonna take it to BMW. It's still day one. I still have 7 days to make sure that I like this car, or I can return it. Now, I thought before I take it to BMW, I just wanna take a quick walk around the car and see if there's anything else that I need them to address. So I noticed the alignment was off, and I thought that was just a little bit odd that you just buy a car that they claim that it goes through all of these different inspections, and clearly they forgot to align it, or there's something else wrong that they're not saying. So that brought me to just do a quick walk around on the car. So I was walking around, and as you know, I take these cars apart frequently, and I was walking and I noticed this gap right here. And then I went to compare it with this one, and this is more like I can stick my fingernail in. This one, I think my 4-year-old could stick his whole finger in. So I noticed that the trunk alignment was off, which was a little bit odd. And I took it up, and I noticed that there's only one, but there's a missing screw. This kind of looks like it was almost left outside. So I thought that was a little odd. Now, is it difficult to fix? No, we'll do a video on how to do it. Basically, you pull this down, there's a screw here, and then there's a screw on the other side here. And you can just loosen it, shuffle it around, and put it back into place. But I thought that was just very odd. So I took the car over to BMW, we threw it up on a lift, just to start to address some of the alignment issues, and then just kind of see what's going on with the trunk. And at this point, we had the car up on the lift, and they allowed me to go back and check it out. So I was just looking around, and one of the things I noticed is if you look in here, in the wheel well, all this stuff in here. I was trying to take a look at what it was. It's actually rubber from a tire. And if you take a closer look, there's tons and tons of rubber. So we're like, what could cause all of this rubber? The tires look great, but there's all this rubber everywhere. So we got the car up on a lift, and as you can see right now, the strut is about, I'll say like an inch away from the tire. So the first indication that there was something wrong was the strut was actually touching the tire. This is actually a brand new strut and knuckle down here. I haven't had my car for the last 16 days while they fixed this and then some other issues. So obviously at this point the car needed an alignment. While we were under the car, we also saw a couple other things that were a little cause for concern. First off, if you look underneath the bumper, you can see that it's scratched to death. Now this might spoil a future video, but I have a lip on the car and there's a video coming on that. But under the lip, on this side, and then also on this side, it looks like whoever had this car before me hit curbs, hit cats, hit anything they could find. It was all scratched up. This side was off. This side was awful because it looked like they hit the corner and just smashed it completely in. The other side just had like a gaping hole in it. And while we're here, you may remember that the grill was really scratched up because someone had sanded it down to plasti dip it. So far we found quite a few things, right? Now I'm in the middle of some other video, so I have the belly pan off. But one of the things you can see here when we went to look under, you can see that they really scratched. This is your front jacking point. They hit this so hard, it took off all of the paint and it's actually begun to rust out. Some of the other things that you'll notice underneath the car are that these under shields here are zip tied on. And if you look over by the exhaust over here, you can see that there's actually chunks of it missing. Shooting down the line of the car, you can see there's a huge piece just missing. And it's not on the car right now, but the belly pan just had so many different holes on it. And on the front bumper, most of these fasteners, actually I had to replace because most of them were just completely ground off. So I continued to do my walk around, just carefully look at things. So the next thing I noticed is in the passenger wheel well. It's gonna be hard to see on camera, but all back there's a bunch of oil. And that was due to a bad oil cooler. So that was actually replaced as well. So we continue our walk around the car. So at this point, we weren't even taking apart everything. We just did a very careful walk around of the car, and we saw some pretty obvious signs. So I highly recommend that you do the same thing. So now I have a video on how to do this. So this is something that I looked for, and quite frankly, it was something that I didn't want on my new car. And that's rolled fenders. The best way to tell if you have rolled fenders, obviously it'll flare out up here, but down here it normally pulls this section in a little bit so the bumper doesn't quite line up that great, and it just flares it out a little bit. Now whoever rolled these sort of knew what they were doing. There's not any creases or anything, so it's not the end of the world on that. It's just something that I really didn't want to have done on this car. This bothered me a lot more. So whoever had this car had wide tires, and the way that you know that is because the wide tires burned off the paint. So this is going to have to be sanded down and also repainted. Otherwise what's going to happen, you can see bare metal right there, that's just going to rust out, and then that's going to be a huge pain. Now while you're here and looking at your fenders, what you want to do is just look at the fender liner. Now I think 3 out of 4 of these are broken, so it's actually not doing anything and water is getting up here. So I'm actually going to have to replace all 4 of those as well. While we're talking about the paint, someone must have changed the windshield wipers, but they didn't know how, or they just tried to clean or something like that. But the paint is completely scratched off here, and then over here by the other windshield wiper. All right, so while we were at BMW, we had the car up on a lift, and there's some obvious damage to the exhaust, and there was some kind of repair right here. When I was talking to the guys at BMW, they said that they would never weld. They would always use a clamp. So that was just a little bit odd. Then up here with the Comfort Access electronics, we noticed that everything is just kind of loose. So you can see here, and just kind of like zip tied together. So we thought that that was really weird. Now the company that we bought the car from claims that none of their cars have ever been in any accidents. The cars go through this 120 some multi-point inspection. I hate to say it, but you can't trust it. You have to just go through things from yourself. So once we saw the trunk was misaligned, we got under the car, we saw that there was damage to the exhaust and it was welded back together. Then we saw that a lot of the electronics were zip tied together, which was all just really weird. So we started looking for overspray, and we found some. And once we popped the trunk lid, all underneath there's a ton of overspray. Needless to say, we believe this car has been rear-ended, and we went to a body shop after we went to BMW just to have that confirmed, and they said that the back of this car has been repainted. Now I know these cars pretty well from taking them apart so much, so what I did is I actually asked the shop foreman of BMW to go over the car with me just to make sure that I didn't miss anything. And there's some things that he caught and there's some things that I caught. So collectively we were able to find quite a few things that we pointed out today. And then what you can do is take your car to BMW, have them put it up on a lift, look at the car, make sure that everything looks good, and maybe ask the shop foreman to just go around the car with you and say, would you buy this car? Now in this case it was just a lot of cosmetic. There wasn't real mechanical damage, but there easily could have been. So here's my advice: whether you're buying your car at a BMW dealer or you're buying it private, see if you can take the car to a mechanic. Put the car up on a lift, and you and the mechanic, whether it be BMW or an indie shop, walk around the car and first start by the obvious signs. I mean, like I was saying before, start with the quarter panel and your front fender. Is it rolled out? Is the paint chipping? Check the liners. Are the liners torn? Are there signs that the car's been lowered? If you have a jack, go ahead and put the car up on a jack. Just slide underneath the car, make sure you check it out. Again, a lot of the stuff that we found on this wasn't very difficult, but you had to have the car up in the air and you had to look past the excitement of getting a new car. Now this is pretty obvious, but everything on a BMW is very expensive. So even though these under panels are just plastic, they're still very expensive. Even the jack pads alone were about $100 for 4. So it's just these 4 little pieces of plastic, and they're about 25 bucks a piece. So you know, that's a quick $100. The strut and the knuckle and the oil cooler, that was about $2,000. Now that was all covered by the company. So at the end of the day, you really just have to weigh out your pros and cons. Now for me, I was able to go back to the company, show them the information from the body shop and from BMW, the list of everything that was wrong with the vehicle that they had claimed on their website, that it would be in pristine condition, no accidents, absolutely nothing wrong with it. And you really just have to weigh out, is it worth it to you? So on this car, the bumper was pretty messed up, the underbody was pretty messed up, the wires were kind of dangling off in the back, the exhaust was pretty messed up, it needed a new strut, it needed a new oil cooler, it needed a new knuckle, it's going to need some paint, and it's going to need some other things. So after all of that, I was able to make a settlement with the company and get some money back to repair the vehicle. Now they were pretty accommodating. They kept trying to buy the car back from me, but I really like the color and I really like the car itself. So through it all, we really just needed to make sure that the price reflected what I was actually buying. And I feel they did a pretty good job. I think they could have done a little bit better. But so I'm not going to say their name or anything like that. The other thing that I think is very important is to go to BMW and just have them run your VIN and pull the whole service history for you. So this way you can see if there's any parts that were replaced under warranty. You can also see if there's any outstanding recalls. This car had a couple things, including a DME actually replaced, that I wasn't too excited about, but you know, I'm glad to see that there's a new one in the car. You also want to see if there's any signs of any performance mods that were on the car, whether it be an intake, a JB4. Look for piercings in the firewall, especially in those plastic clips. If you watch our JB4 installation video, you'll be able to tell. These are just, it's not saying that someone that had a JB4 on the car was beating it up. I mean, and honestly, my wife says I drive like a grandpa, but I save it for the track because I'm not reckless. I don't race it. I don't drive fast really on the streets. It's you know, save it for the track, keep it safe, wear a helmet. Now when it comes to the motor, if you haven't had a BMW before, sometimes they can sound like diesels. So that's perfectly normal. We get a lot of people that send us sound clips and they say, hey, this car sounds funny. It sounds like a diesel, but it's gas. What's going on? But that's normal. Again, this is Brian. Thanks for watching Kies Motorsports. I hope that today's video has helped you as you begin to look for some kind of BMW or just any car in general, to be honest with you. Again, look for some of the obvious signs, walk around, look at the fenders, put the car up on a lift, look for holes, look for just obvious signs of damage. And then if you see something that's not quite right, if your wheel is off, make sure you get in alignment and just do things like look at the distance from the strut to the tire itself. If your trunk's misaligned, here's an example of just kind of taking it a little bit further and seeing really what the root cause of the problem is. In this sense, there was probably some kind of accident and it was just never aligned correctly. So just take a deeper dive, have someone else go through it with you, make sure you get a Carfax, make sure you have BMW pull that VIN and get all of the service history, and they'll let you know if anything has happened in the past. Again, this is Brian. Make sure you give us a like, make sure you subscribe, check us out at kiesmotorsports.com. Thanks for watching and stay tuned. Thanks so much, have a great day.